Okay, we're rolling.
Hey, welcome back to the How to Podcast series. It's Dave with you. Hope you're doing well. We are here chatting about podcast listener data, analytics, that stuff that everybody just obsesses over. They release a new episode and they quickly run off to see, did anybody listen to this? Where are they listening? How long? Blah, 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 blah. I'm so excited. Whoa. Yeah. Right now, Spotify has announced in conjunction with some other people that they've redefined what the length of a listen is. Engaged, intended listen to be 30 seconds compared to what the industry has been talking about as 1 minute as the standard for a listen. I have a different take on this, a different opinion that I don't hear any other gurus talking about. And I think it would really shake up podcasting if my thoughts were maybe taken into consideration and applied to this whole question about what is a download, what does it mean to get a listen. I think my thing that I'm thinking about, again, which I'm not hearing a lot of people talk about, I think my approach might actually be very interesting. Let's chat about this. So if it's your first time here, welcome to the How to Podcast series. I'm Dave. I've been podcasting now I'm in my 8th year now in podcasting and over 2,500 episodes at this point across multiple shows, and half of those being interviews. I've been doing a lot of podcasting. So being here with you is great. I really appreciate you finding the show. If somebody shared it with you, great. If you found it on your own, well done. And if you've been here for a while, thanks for being my friend in podcasting. This whole thing about 30-second downloads, like that's the measurement now. It's interesting because what I'm finding is a lot of this is driven by marketing. What I'm understanding from the marketing side when they look at podcasting is they don't have a clear definition of what engagement looks like. We have YouTube on one hand. Nobody truly knows 100% what counts as a download on YouTube, what counts as a view. It's kind of foggy, and anybody that tells you that they know exactly what that is and they don't work for YouTube, I'd be a little suspicious of that. So we don't really know totally for sure what a YouTube play represents as far as the length, right? So that's one. And then we have now Spotify claiming that 30 seconds is now what they measure as an intended listen. So that's one thing. We have podcast hosting sites and the IAB out there that helps to measure this for radio and other things and podcasting. And 1 minute has been pretty well the standard for a long time in podcasting, that 1 minute of play represents a listen. Now that's quite disappointing if you have a 45-minute podcast. That 30 seconds to a minute qualifies as a listen when you put a lot of work into your show. My alternative to all of this would be we drop the time part altogether from measurement. We no longer talk about time spent listening as far as what signals the bare minimum of a listen. I love retention rate, though, to be the counter to my own statement. I love that we can measure how long people listen to the episode. So I'm talking about what's the minimum standard. Okay, I do love having people listen to the entire episode of my show. It does signal to the apps that people are coming and enjoying the content. They're sticking around. So I love that part of it. So don't get me wrong. I still am a big fan of that. But the minimum, right? This 30 seconds as a minimum. That's the part that I'm kind of like, My thought is let's drop that part when we're measuring the bare minimum, and let's focus on a percentage of the episode listened compared to the actual time that somebody listens to the episode, being 30 seconds now with Spotify and a few other places. So if I had a 1 minute podcast, right, that's the length of my episode, 1 minute. In going to the established standard, that's now being challenged with this new change. A 1 minute podcast, if that's what it counts, right, to be a play, I could have a 100% play rate, retention rate, by having a 1 minute show. because people listen to the whole thing to the end of a minute. It counts as a download or a listen or a play, whatever you call it. And I would have a 100% retention rate. Awesome. Not a lot of room in there for a few ads in a 1 minute episode, but that would count, right? If I had 30 seconds as a play for a 1 minute podcast, they're getting to the halfway mark of my show. That's pretty good. What's not good is 30 seconds of a play for a 3-hour episode, or an hour, or 45 minutes, or 30 minutes. That's not very great at all. That's actually quite disappointing, that all I have to do is listen to 30 seconds and I can leave and you get your listen. Congratulations. Go out, get your sponsorship, celebrate, post your, I got 100,000 downloads. Yeah, you've got 100,000 30-second downloads, technically, with this change. Whoopity-doo, right? That's not an engaged audience. Those are just people passing by. Imagine if it was a percent of the total episode length. How would that change podcasting? How would that change how we talk about our stats? How would that change everything about what we do in podcasting if it was all based on a percentage of time listened? So 50% of a 1 minute podcast is 30 seconds. 50% of a 1 hour podcast is 30 minutes. What if it was 50%, 80%, 75% of an episode? You had to get to that percentage mark in the episode, no matter how long the episode is. The longer the episode, the longer the percentage would be, like the space, right? What if it was that instead of the 30-second mark? What if that was the way we measured an episode success and retention rate and engagement and a download? Imagine if somebody had to listen to 50 to 80% of your episode for it to count as a listen, not 30 seconds. 50% of your episode length, total length. I think this would change everything in podcasting. I really, really do. I think this would really, really change the conversation. See, I think this whole thing around measurement and this 30 seconds, 1 minute thing is probably one of the biggest flaws in podcast analytics to date. That a play does not necessarily equal the meaningful consumption of an episode and the content. I think it's like the worst possible thing to be proud of, that somebody listened to your show for 30 seconds. I don't see why that's such a great flag to wave. Look at me with my 30-second listen. Whoopee-doo. They didn't get anything out of your show in 30 seconds. Nothing. Nothing. You didn't even finish your intro. You might have even 30 seconds of music before you even spoke on the mic in a 30-second window. So what's the big win? What's the big flex there if nobody's even heard your content? You're happy with that? I'm not. The challenge is a 30-second listen means very different things depending on the length of the episode. For a 60-second podcast, 30 seconds, like we said, would represent 50% consumption. That's a strong signal to the listener intent for that episode. Albeit a very short episode, it's a good signal. For a 3-hour podcast, 30 seconds represents 0.28% of the content. The listener may not have even heard the host finish introducing the episode at the 30-second mark. This creates a measurement problem, I think, where the short-form creator and the long-form creator can appear to have similar plays despite the vastly different levels of engagement with the episode. What would happen if we use percentage consumed instead of 30 seconds to a minute? Instead of measuring a play as a fixed amount of time, platforms could measure an intentional listen based on a percentage of the episode consumed. For example, 25% of the episode consumed could be engaged listeners, 50% consumed could be qualified listeners, 75% consumed could be intentional listeners, and 100% consumed could be completed listeners as metrics. That would be interesting to know. But the minimum play that would signal a actual listen could be anything between 25 to 100%. And an agreed upon percentage of episode listened could be the standard over a 30-second or a minute, which seems to be a race to the bottom from my point of view. So under this model, a 10-minute episode would require 7.5 minutes to qualify as an intentional listen. A 3-hour episode would require 2 hours and 15 minutes of listener time to count. All of this would take away all of those bot farms that promise you 100,000 downloads and for $5.99, right? Because who's gonna listen to 2 hours and 15 minutes of an episode to get you a download when all I need is 30 seconds currently? So I think we've opened the door for all of these paid services to get us listens, which I would not encourage you to do at all. I think this metric becomes length agnostic, and it focuses on an engagement rather than just mere starts. And that's actually what we're measuring right now is starts, not listens, not plays, not engagement. We're just measuring starts. Somebody hit play, even with their elbow by accident. Boom, you got your stat. So how would this affect podcast statistics overall if we moved away from a 30-second measurement as engagement to a percentage of episode length? What would happen? I think, first of all, downloads would just drop overnight. Many podcasts would see a dramatic reduction in reported plays, but it's more of a realistic number. Again, why 30 seconds as a badge of honor? Congratulations. Somebody listened to you burp. That's it. That's all that was. You sneezed and you got a download. Congratulations. Well done. That's great content. A listener who samples an episode for 90 seconds and leaves would no longer count as a successful listen if we went to a percentage over a time spent listening as a minimum. It might sound negative, but it could actually produce a more accurate picture of an engaged audience, and that's exactly what sponsors are looking for. If you have sponsors, I don't. But if you did, that's what they're looking for, engaged listeners. I think retention would become more important then in this world of percent of listen compared to 30 seconds of listen. Creators would then focus less on attracting clicks in the first 30 seconds and spend more time creating engaging content that people just can't get enough of and want to listen to. I think this kind of mirrors what's happened on YouTube when watch time became more important than views. Suddenly, the audience retention became the metric that mattered and was promoted and accepted, as this is where we need to head. There's some long-term podcast benefits, I think, to this as well. Today, a 3-hour interview and a 10-minute news briefing are measured using the exact same minimum threshold. I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's fair at all. A percentage-based consumption would actually recognize the long-form audiences often have deeper engagement, even if they consume content across multiple different kind of listening sessions. And advertisers would get a better data set for podcasting. Advertisers, they care less about the stats and more about whether listeners actually heard their ads. A 75% completion metric would provide stronger evidence that an audience remained engaged throughout the episode, and this would increase confidence in a podcasting advertising and potentially improve our CPMs, cost per milli, which is cost per thousand listens, and shows that have a highly engaged audience would benefit with the advertisers. And it's for me, from my outside perspective, I think this is more of an accurate number than 30-second start. But there's a potential problem to this as well. The problem is a pure 75% threshold may actually be too high. Many listeners consume podcasts differently than video. They pause during commutes. They listen over several days. They skip segments. So if you had chapters, you could jump around in the episode and pick out the things you listen to. It might not add up to 75%. So that's a flaw in my approach to this. They may gain tremendous value in the first hour of a 3-hour conversation without ever reaching that 75% mark. So then it wouldn't even count as a download or a listen or a play based on the model I'm suggesting. But under a strict model, those listeners just wouldn't count if it was a hard set percent of listen per episode. So I get that. I think there's maybe another alternative to this then. And this is something we can think about and talk about, and I'd love to get your feedback on what you feel about this. But what about an intentional listener rate, an ILR? What if we did this? So an intentional listen rate could be that a play is 30 seconds, which is now the new standard through Spotify and others. An engaged listen would be 25%. A meaningful listen, like we mentioned, would be 50%. An intentional listen would 75%. And a completion rate at 95% plus. This would preserve the historical reporting while adding a much richer understanding of audience behavior. Could this be the answer? Well, it could, but with all things in podcasting, it depends. It is probably closer to the truth than the current system that we have. And again, I'm not in the mix like all of the hosting sites, so I'm kind of speaking out of turn a little bit, and I understand that. And I don't have that experience behind me to back all this up. I'm just thinking out loud, dreaming out loud, right? And wondering what would be better than 30-second start. I'm still not satisfied that that's an indicator of engagement. I can't celebrate that. It feels really, short-sighted and short in length as well. I think the industry has always prioritized standardization because advertisers need comparable numbers across millions of podcasts and all the different platforms. From YouTube, again, we don't really know what YouTube thinks a play or a listen or a view is officially. I think the problem is that a fixed 30-second threshold, it actually measures access and not attention. And that's the key. Those starts, it's measuring its access to a podcast. It's not attention to a podcast. I'm more about intention. I'm more about you still being here and your attention is still with me than all the people that clicked play at the 30-second mark at the beginning of the episode and they're gone. To me, you listening to this right now, you're the most important person to me over the 30-second clicks at the beginning. A percentage-based model measures engagement, and that's what I focus on for my show. I want my engagement rates to grow even more than the 30-second play at the beginning, the start. If podcasting wants to evolve beyond simple download counts and demonstrate the true value of long-form content, I really believe that percentage consumed may be one of the most important metrics that the industry needs to adopt, support, and promote over the 30 seconds that Spotify is talking about. I think the future may not be replacing the play, that 30 seconds. It may be recognizing that there's a huge difference between someone who sampled 30 seconds and someone who stayed for 75% of a 3-hour conversation. Today, those two listeners often look far more similar than the data tells us that they are. And that is the gap, I think, in podcasting. So, what are your thoughts? Am I pissing you off with that? You're like, there is no way that I'm going to agree to a percent of listen. I want my 30 seconds so I can tell everybody that I'm a top 1% podcast. I know I'm stepping on toes, and I'm doing it on purpose because I just feel like it's a race to the bottom. Soon it's going to be 5 seconds. It'll be half a second, and we'll be all celebrating. Someone listened to my show for half a second. Woo! put me on a list, right? I'm the best. No, nobody even heard your content. Nobody cares what you're talking about. And really, what's the point of podcasting if all we're worried about is the first 30 seconds? Why are we here? Why even start a podcast? Just create a 30-second podcast and be done with it. Who cares, right? I care, and I'm glad you're still here. Percent of listen over an entire episode, over 30 seconds. I'm kind of leaning more towards the percentage. I'd love to hear what you think. howtopodcast.ca. Talk soon. So here at the How to Podcast series, we love to hear from you. You might think that we get a lot of feedback. Man, we don't. We don't get a lot because people just feel like, why bother? Like, why? Does Dave really care what I have to say? And I do. I actually do really care what you have to say. I love your input. I love hearing from you. And we've started a survey for our listening audience, which includes you right here, right now. And I'd love, love, love for you to head over to howtopodcast.ca. And you'll see our survey right there on our website. And take a few minutes, come through, answer the thoughtful questions we're asking of you to make the show better. Not just for you, but for everyone. Your feedback is really going to help shape the show. And I selfishly just want to hear from you. So if you're thinking, Dave probably already knows what I think, I don't. I really don't. I'm not good at reading minds. My wife will confirm that completely. So I don't really know what you think of the show. I don't know if you like it, if you like how long the show is, how long the episodes are, that Dave's doing 365 episodes in a year. Oh my gosh. Like, I would love to hear from you and get your thoughts on this very show right here. So head over to howtopodcast.ca, click on our survey link. It's also in the show notes for every episode, in the most recent episodes, and I'd love to hear from you. So as a listener of this here very show, your feedback can make this show so much better. So much better. And I'm not drowning in emails and voice messages and speak pipes and buy me a coffees right now. So I'm putting the ask out to you right now, as a listener of the show, and you're still here, that you take a moment, head over to our website, click the link in the show notes for any episode, and go to our survey and let us know your thoughts about this show, how it could be better, and what you love, and what you're like, Dave, can you stop doing this? That would be really helpful. Thanks for being here and being part of the How to Podcast family. See you over at howtopodcast.ca. Talk soon. Thanks for being here. Bye. You're still here. Amazing. So at the end of all the episodes, for episode 500 going forward, I've been doing like little bonus tips about podcasting, answer questions, talking about the coaching I do with podcasters and the conversations, bringing them here at the end. I do this to the theme of this episode to encourage longer retention rates and people listening further into the episode. So that's why I'm doing this. So if you haven't heard the bonus tips from episode 500 till today, you missed a lot of tips, and they're not even directly related to the content of the episode, just so you know. So yeah, if you're bored and you've been skipping out near the end of the episodes, you missed something. So that's why I'm doing this. So I was talking to a podcaster this week, and we were talking about they're an interview-based podcast. And they said, Dave, I'm getting a lot of one-word answers from my guests, and I'm really struggling as the host interviewing these people. It's like they've had no media training, and they just give me short answers, and it's like pulling teeth. And this person's not a dentist, so this is not their skill set. It's like pulling teeth to get them to answer anything with a story or valuable content, a great conversation. It's just one-word, two-word answers and just boring as heck. What do I do? So my suggestion to them, first of all, is take out all of your yes-no questions. Just remove them from your list of questions that you ask, your go-to things. Just drop all those one-word, two-word questions. Do you like pizza? Yes or no? Yes. Okay, next question. Do you like that? No, that's not... You're creating the problem with yes and no questions. So stop that, first of all. And that's the one thing we're working on. I'm like, here, I'm going to listen to the last 5 episodes of your show, and I'm going to give you a list of all the yes, no questions you asked. And they're like, oh no. Yeah, so that's what I do, is I actually listen to your podcast, unlike other gurus. I will go listen to your show. So avoid the yes, no questions, and then use prompts instead, like take me to the moment when, or how did you feel when this happened? Like do those kind of things that open up a story, open up, it's a loop, it's an open loop that needs to be closed. It's very hard to give a one-word answer to questions like that. So that's what I would encourage you to do, is drop the one-word question answers and focus on open-ended loop questions that need a completion to it. And coach your guest before you go on and hit record. Listen, I'm here to give value with this conversation to my audience. So let's talk to the audience like they're here, and let's bring them into the conversation. So share something of value with the audience so that we can engage them. And they'll love what you're doing, and I'm glad to have you on my show. Start with that and drop those yes, no questions. Please. They're not adding any value. If you need help, howtopodcast.ca. Talk soon.